This gaming PC just came to shop because after a customer upgraded his motherboard, CPU, and GPU, well, the system won't boot past the BIOS. Yet our customer said he had an operating system previously installed. So what's going on here? Well, the first thing I noticed immediately after turning on the system is that there are no boot devices listed, which is kind of odd because our customer installed the same boot drive. Which means if we press F8, it should be popping up. But clearly it's not, so what gives? Well, the other thing I noticed here is that we do have two drives being recognized. A SATA hard drive as well as an M.2 drive, which you would think is the boot drive, but you see how it says M.2_2? Well, that made me a little suspicious because that typically means you have your drive installed in the second M.2 slot on your motherboard, which is perfectly fine, except for when I was inspecting the system. Well, I'm pretty sure there's an M.2 drive in that first slot. And I doubt that first slot's labeled _2. But we can actually visualize this by using one of the coolest tools I've ever seen implemented in a motherboard called Q Dashboard that Asus recently added that breaks down everything connected to your computer, including your USB ports and your M.2 slots, where we'll see M.2_2 is that second slot, and nothing's labeled for that first one. But that doesn't make a whole lot of sense because under this heatsink, there's clearly a drive, even though it didn't show up in the BIOS. So why is that? Well, typically that would indicate a dead drive, but that's not what's happening here. Rather, it all has to do with the fact that this is a SATA SSD. What I mean by that is that even though this is an M.2 drive, which refers to its form factor, it's not exactly the same as the PCIe drives you're probably familiar with. Because not only are the connectors keyed differently, these drives actually operate off of two completely different interfaces that communicate with your motherboard. The newer NVMe PCIe drives use the same type of PCIe connection that you use for your GPU, which is incredibly fast. While these M.2 SATA drives use the same interface as mechanical hard drives, which is pretty limiting and is why they've basically been phased out. And although some older motherboards do allow their M.2 slots to hold both SATA and PCIe drives, as it's connected for both, this new Asus board does not. And it's actually pretty clear because if you look right next to the M.2 connector, we can actually see this little diagram right here that says PCIe 5.0/4, which means it works, and the SATA actually has an X through it, meaning don't use it, or that it simply just won't work. So no wonder our customer's old boot drive isn't working in his new upgraded system. And although some motherboards may have one that's combined, and then all the others like this, I checked the manual on this board, and it has no M.2 SATA support. So after explaining to our customer why his drive didn't work, he said reinstall Windows on his other M.2 drive. So that's what we're gonna do by plugging in an installation media, which because there's no other boot drive, when we go to turn the system on, when it fires up, will load us right into the Windows setup tool, which will let us install Windows on his compatible drive. And just like that, this upgraded gaming PC is now back to booting the Windows. So just remember, not all M.2 drives are created equal.